Good evening, and thank you for joining into Little City's second virtual town hall meeting. My name is Tina Marasini, Director of Communications at Little City, and I am once again here with our Executive Director, Sean Jeffers. The COVID-19 pandemic has certainly affected all of us in small and large ways, both personally and professionally. Not many of us could have imagined 2.5 months ago how different Little City would look and feel today. From the temporary closure of our day services programming and classes at the Center for Education, the cancellation of our special events, and the difficult decision to suspend family visits in our residential program. It has been heartbreaking to see the catastrophic toll this pandemic has taken on our country and our community. But it has been heartwarming to witness our staff and our families rise to the occasion in support of each other and those we have pledged to serve while facing so much uncertainty. A few weeks ago, we asked our employees and our families the topics that they would like to have discussed for this second virtual town hall. Throughout the next hour, we will discuss the 3 main topics that were consistently brought up. First, the common question of when Little City's community day services programming will resume. Next, the matter of family visitation to our homes and bringing residents back to Little City who currently are at their family's home. And finally, the economic toll resulting from this crisis, the concern from staff over fears of potential layoffs, and concern over the future financial stability of the organization. Along with Little City's Executive Director discussing the details of those 3 topics, you will hear firsthand from a Little City parent on how her family has been dealing with the effects of the crisis while they have been apart from their loved one who lives at Little City. And there will also be opportunities for you to take part in a few polls. Our Chief Development Officer, Jane Drew, will introduce 2 questions that, for those watching, will be able to answer. Sean, as we begin to delve deep into these topics, I first wanted to thank you for encouraging us to use this platform to reach our Little City family, and at this time, we are unusually separated.
It would help if I unmuted my microphone. So, Tina, you just gave, I think, one of the most compelling opening statements. And as I listened to you walk us through that dreadful moment, just as you mentioned, where there was this great amount of uncertainty in our personal lives and our organizational lives, and you helped me just in those moments of you giving your opening comments, kind of relive it, but also from the perspective of looking at it in today's view to see how far we've come. I've spent a lot of time since our last discussion. It seems like the greater part of my day is explaining, purposing, calming, doing a lot of things that I wouldn't ordinarily believe that we have to do. The nature of this virus, and its, as you mentioned, its impact, is one that leaves us with more questions than answers. It's one that doesn't let loose. And I was sharing with the staff person today, what we said 6 weeks ago is no longer true today. And just very quickly, I'll give one example of that. When the virus first hit, the guidance that we were giving, both given and giving others, was that if exposed, go home for 14 days. If you're in close contact, and the whole, well, one of the things that was realized, particularly for those of us, those of you in essential positions, you run out of people rather quickly. And so that guidance changed. And so I had people mentioning what we said then is not true now. And I think we're going to begin to see that. And I'd even caution what we talk about today, tonight, can easily change over the next 30 days, but it is the best guidance that we can give right now. And I think that's why conversations like this become very critical, that we have to have ongoing communication as we move forward, because the world as we know it is rapidly changing. As those of you who know me know that I tend to speak in stories. You know, it's pictures and stories are the things that guide me. And as we were preparing for this, there were two kind of analogies that came to mind. One is in the context of sports, and there may be some non-sports related people here, but I think it's something we can all relate to. And that's the concept of halftime. All right, so we came into this crisis with not a full understanding of the game, how long it was going to last and the like. In some ways, I feel that we're at a halfway point, that we've weathered, I think, some of the venom and strength that this virus can bring. We now pause to get ready for the second half. One of the great writers that I have often called upon, and even at a personal level, as I've tried to assess where I am in my life, was a gentleman by the name of Bob Buford, and he wrote a book about halftime. And he talked about that the real game of life is won in the second half. It's where you move from success to significance. And in some ways, I look at where we are right now is that critical juncture that we know and are beginning to assess the damage, as you shared, Tina, the damage that this virus has caused. We're going to have to do that inventory. And then as we move forward, we can't play the same game that got us in this position. That our game, we will win on the basis of a new way of thinking, as opposed to holding on to the previous ideas. I jokingly mentioned before we started, Tina, I always throw out just some words that help me kind of conceptualize. And just for my wordsmiths out there, the difference between paranoia and metanoia. Metanoia really represents a new way of thinking, that we can't look at Little City in the old way, because I get paranoid about that. But if we're going to move ahead, our shift has got to be toward possibilities, because a lot of the roads that we thought were our path to success, they're no longer there. And so that second analogy that I shared with you a little bit earlier was the idea of an earthquake. And some of us have experienced that. And what happens after an earthquake is the scariest part is the aftershock. And it's at that aftershock that we once again begin to see what has happened to us, what has happened to our roadways or our pipelines, et cetera. And it's the same thing now as we come to this critical juncture. We're now beginning to look out and begin to see, what do we still have? What don't we have? What has been weakened and what has been strengthened? All in preparation for this hopeful, bold new future that we hope to create, that will not look like what it is that we remembered. And I think that's the part that's going to be very tough for us. All of us, whether or not it's organizational life or personal life, are facing some degrees of changes that aren't going to be short-lived. They may be forever. And so Little City's no different, and we'll get into that in terms of what program focus or the money's available, but we're at that point that we can either be bitter or be better by the circumstance that we now find ourselves in. My objective, and particularly in talking with each of you today, is the hope that I can move you from a feeling of loss to hopefully we're moving into a path of success. It is what it is. It's halftime. We know how the enemy plays the game. We know that we can do it better, play it better, and we'll make it better. But we have to first assess and know and come to grips with what has happened so that we can begin to move ahead.
I love that analogy, Sean. Thank you for setting the tone. I know it's been a long 2 months and we want to get through this together as a team. Let's jump right into our first topic. Our Community Day Services programming has been closed since mid-March. As Illinois is gradually entering into phase 3 of Restore Illinois, our families want to know the following. When will Community Day Services resume, as this programming provides their loved ones with vital activity, routine, and engagement with others.
Tina, I wish I had an absolute number, an absolute date. As most know, or if you don't know, the governor had issued another order that basically said for the month of June, programs like our community day service will remain closed. It didn't speak to what happens after then. We are in constant discussion with not only our peers and partners, but with representatives from the Department of Human Services about the future of day services. If we were looking back 30 days ago, the notion there is that any group of 10 or less would be required. And if you look at serving the hundreds of people that we serve, our ability to meet the needs of hundreds of people in separate environments would seem like an impossibility. As we look now, that number is beginning to shift toward 50. I don't know, Tina, when June 30th comes, exactly what our day services will have to look like in order to comply with the rules and regs. One of the things that we did, I think as you referenced, we did send a survey out to families and others involved just to kind of get a sense of their expectation. Would they be willing, those of us who travel, are you ready today to jump on a plane? Are you ready today to walk into a ballpark? Are you ready today to go to Ravinia if there was a concert? And it's no different with our families, that their readiness to do something is also going to drive our ability to do it. So if we were to say we're going to open tomorrow and no one shows up, and so we have to get better information on what is the level of tolerance, because June 30 is not going to be where all that ails us or all that we're concerned about is gone. So I think during this time, Tina, as we get more information, we're planning as best as we can for what do we need to put in place to serve the most or greatest number of people in the safest way. Our goal will be to serve everyone who has prior received service from us or who wishes to serve. But until we know a little bit more, a lot more actually, about what will the expectation be, we know social distancing is still going to be there. We know that wearing a face mask is going to be there. We know that there's still going to be some continuation of difficulties in getting testing. We know that there are a series of things that still will occur over the next 30 days that may impede our ability to just fully open the doors. But our goal will be, again, to serve as many people as we can, as safely as we can, as soon as we can.
Thank you, Sean. I think one thing we can agree on is that programming will look very different than it did a few months ago. At this point, I would like to introduce our first poll question presented by our Chief Development Officer. Jane, could you please share the first poll question?
Good evening. Thank you, Tina and Sean, and good evening to everyone. And I want to add my thanks to all of you joining us tonight. As Sean mentioned a few things about community day services opening, we thought now would be a great time to sort of get a pulse of the crowd. So we're going to ask you, how comfortable are you with community day services opening? And you'll see they're yes, similar to the same format a few months ago. 2, yes, with some safety precautions in place. 3, no, I'm not comfortable at all. So you'll see those that are watching, there's a live event Q&A. So if you were to type in 1, 2, or 3 into that area, I would love to know what the audience feels right now about how comfortable you all are with community day services opening. So if everyone could take the opportunity to type in a 1 or a 2 or a 3 in the live event Q&A, and I'll give us a little time so that everyone can find that area, and I will talk to you about the results. So I do see some results coming in. I will give you all about, 30 seconds, I guess, yep, I see a lot of them coming in. Thank you, everyone who's participating in the poll. Okay, they're coming in. I see a flood of them all at the last minute. I think you all found the Q&A button. So I'll just give it about 15 more seconds, and looking at the results, it's fairly even. The majority, a slight majority, went with number 2. Yes, with the safety precautions in place, sort of that 60%, and the remainder were 3. I'm not yet comfortable. I'm not comfortable. No one is ready at this point to say yes. Similar format to a few months ago, which is not surprising to all of us. Sean, what do you think about the results that we're getting?
I'm actually pleased because it says to me that we are taking this serious. If anyone was suggesting let's go back to the old way, 200 people in a room and life is good, we've failed in our communication. So the fact that people are either not comfortable yet or will be comfortable as we put in place more safety precautions is the answer that I hope for, Jane. And so one of the things that I failed to mention when Tina first asked the question, and I want to use the school program as that example. I would have never guessed, and I don't know if Phil and Jessica are on the phone, but I would have never thought that we could successfully do e-schooling with the kids that we have. And I personally witnessed that. Is it the perfect replacement for being in a classroom? The answer is no. But is it a very good substitute for that time in between? The answer is yes. And so my hope is when we look at day services, that we can still come up with some options that allows people to have a high degree of quality engagement while we wait for the other models to occur. So it would be a failure to me come July to have people sit at home with virtually nothing to do. And so our objective in learning what we've learned from the school are to explore, can we do smaller settings? Can we do in-home operations? What can we do to make sure that the people we serve have the highest degree of moments in their day to lead to a quality of life? And so we will be creative as heck. Sorry, Tina.
Thank you, Sean. And Phil did chime in. He is on.
Okay.
So before we jump into the next question, I would like to introduce Leanna Patterson. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to speak via video conference with Leanna, who is a Little City board member. But not only is she a board member, she is a parent. Her son, Tim, has resided at Little City since 2017. Because of the pandemic and Little City's restrictions on visits during this time, Leanna and her family have not been able to have their regular visits with Tim. The Pattersons typically visit with their son 2 to 3 times a week, so this separation has no doubt been extraordinarily difficult. Here is Leanna talking about her family's experience during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Things considered, we've been okay, but it's been definitely a struggle to manage everything, just like everybody else, to manage everything in your life. So we have 3 kids. Tim is at Little City, and then we have 2 younger children. And, it's been difficult being at home and finding that new routine and not being able to see Tim. Our younger kids are engaged in school, and we both work, my husband and I both work from home. And then, of course, there's Tim, who we can't see right now, and that's mainly been through FaceTime. So what we try to do is we try to structure our days as best as possible, stay positive, do things like go for walks outside and just try to, be close as a family and connect with family members, including Tim, as much as we can. Well, I think that many of us knew that the shelter in place was coming a few days before it was announced. And Mark and I had multiple discussions about whether or not we should take Tim home with us and have him stay with us for the duration of the shelter in place. And I think a lot of parents will be able to recognize these feelings, in that it sort of felt like it was when we had to first decide to place Tim. I remember several days of being really upset and really thinking, is this the right thing to do? It's a big change. It felt very much the same. So I went through a very similar process, Mark and I did. But in the end, we both recognize that Little City has taken care of Tim for just about 3 years now and has done a really great job with him. He's safe at Little City, and he knows the routine, and he likes the routine there. So weighing all those things, also, of course, our other 2 children and how our house is set up, we've moved, since Tim has moved into Foglia, we realized that, we had to be brave and trust him at Little City and knowing that he will be okay. So that initial phase was just the hardest part. And I think a lot of parents will be able to identify with those feelings. But then once he was there, the first few weeks, we're gauging how your child's doing. And I think as a parent, you're having a hard time, but most importantly, you're wondering how your child's doing. And luckily, Tim has been fairly stable through this whole time, and he's been happy every time we talk to him on FaceTime. It's every evening at 7 o'clock, we talk on FaceTime, and he has always been content, and you can tell he's snacking and he's happy. So it's hard for us, but it's good to see that he's well taken care of and that he's fairly content. And everything that we've heard from staff is that he's enjoying the sensory room, the backyard, and he's engaging in school, and that he's doing, all things considered, okay. Something I've seen in our 2 other children, Christopher and Julia, is that usually they don't really express as much, missing Tim or, wanting to see Tim because they know they're going to see him every week, twice a week. But after about a week and a half, they started asking, why aren't we seeing Tim? Where's Tim? Is Tim okay? And it's kind of been nice to see them interact on FaceTime, because it almost is more close. Like they're more interested in seeing him on FaceTime, and the things they say are so sweet. So it's been difficult, but with the modern technology, it's been wonderful. And we're very thankful that Little City staff has done a great job, and that we're able to FaceTime every day at 7 o'clock. And we know that this will end, and we know that once it's over, we'll reunite. And I already promised him that I'll make him his favorite nachos once we see each other again. So very hard, but we'll get through it. And we're very thankful for Little City staff. So our hope is, of course, to see Tim very soon. It's been, I think, longer than any of us had expected, because, the date got moved back several times for very important reasons, which is, of course, safety first. I know that Little City has done a great job following the CDC guidelines with staff and with participants. We really look forward to seeing Tim soon. And my hope is that we can really strike a good balance in opening up safely while allowing that close contact with family members and loved ones that is so important. So I really hope to embrace Tim very soon. I know the rest of the family feels the same way. And, eventually we hope that we can have fun in the backyard with him this summer and make his favorite meals and just kind of hang out while being safe. And I know that Little City will have a very good plan for that, and we'll trust in that. But it'll just be one of the best days of my life to see him again in person. Though, again, like I said, FaceTime has been amazing and has been a very good way to connect as well. But it will be just a great day of celebration for many of the parents, I think, when we finally get to the end of this and start gradually going back to what will be our new normal, because I do realize some of the changes in taking precautions will have to be long-term, if not for permanently. So we look forward to that day.
I'm sure a lot of families are feeling very similar to Leanna. That brings us to our second topic. Little City families have not been able to visit in person with their loved ones at Little City for over 2 months. At the same time, some families chose to bring their loved one home, given the uncertainty of when the shelter-in-place mandate would be lifted. So Sean, as Illinois begins to ease its restrictions, what is our plan for allowing residents to return to Little City and for visits to our homes to resume?
Well, Tina, as I listened to Leanna and just kind of rethink the question, we've got about 3 or 4 touch points that we're trying to balance right now. Leanna mentioned one, and I think a number of people raised that question. What is our willingness and their ability to enter back into their loved one's life in a more intimate way, thus by way of visiting? You also shared another touch point are those individuals who chose to take their loved one home for what they thought would be a short period of time as the pandemic unfolded. There's another group not represented on this call because they were folks who were awaiting admission to Little City, but either held off or were held off by us because of the pandemic. And then last is a group in and of itself, and a small group, but we've had individuals who under normal circumstances would have gone into a rehab facility, but instead were wanting replacement back at Little City, okay, for a variety of reasons. And so we're right now at the crux, Tina, of those conversions. And it's very tough because it's a compelling story on each account. All of us didn't realize that it would take so long. And so that family who's got their loved one needing placement has fallen off the crisis. They're about to, maybe return back to the work world. The child needs that, call it a permanent home, but that place to come to. The family who took their child home short term, kind of the same scenario. And then those who allowed their child to stay here but wish to come back and spend some time. And so what we are doing is looking at all of those aspects. We're not at a point, Tina, nor do I think if you and Jane were to raise the question like we just did before, 1, 2, 3, 1, should we just open it up and let everyone return and get back to business as usual? My bet is few of you would agree that that's the answer. Most would probably say, let's do these things with some precaution, because we're not indifferent to the family whose child is in need of services and they're in crisis. We're not indifferent to the family who wishes to get their child back to a place where they can resume some normalcy of activity. We're not going to go against the family that would like to re-engage in a different way. So the question, Tina, becomes one of how best to still preserve the safety and integrity of what we do by also addressing a higher human value. And that is that value of connection, that value of response, that value of service. And what's the quandary about that is you have 2 places that you can easily get to. One is too little, that we can be accused of doing too little, and thus the COVID virus rips us apart. Or we're accused of doing too much. And therefore, what we did at the beginning of this crisis was err on the side of too much, because we didn't want to run the risk that COVID could break our seal in any way. So we're now at that point of trying to decide what's enough. And enough because once you open that door, it's hard to turn back. And so what the program teams have done, and I think the CGH program, given their campus presence, have come up with a couple of suggestions. One by way of how do we reintroduce visitation, and hopefully our people on our webinar, at least our virtual town hall, can see the graphical display of that. That we would limit the times of the visits, which is unusual for us. We would have to make sure that we're scheduled in advance, will be limited to a half hour, that all the personal protection precautions would be put into place, including wearing masks, maintaining social distance, doing the visit outside of the residential home, and making sure that hand washing, sanitizing, the questions that we ask, even temperature taking, are still a part of that. Any objects before they're brought in would be safely checked and sanitized and the like. So we're looking at ways to reasonably address that need for a family to visit. And so what Kelly and Ola on the adult services team will be rolling out something similar. They don't have the same benefit with group home that as our campus homes do, to have the external facilities where people can safely go. So we're going to have to come up with some modification on our adult residential services along these same lines and principles. Rich Bobby will be holding a parent meeting later this week to further walk through, to kind of test it. And so our hope is that we can reasonably come up with guidance that's consistent with what the governor has set forth. We're now moving into phase 3. And those who are not familiar, the governor's laid out the 5-stage plan, 5 phases. We're about to enter into phase 3, which does make allowances for some of the things that we're considering. But we also want to have that caveat: if for some reason the rate of infection increases or exposure increases, we've got to revert back to that way where people thought we were doing too much. And so that's kind of the challenge. We'll also be in discussion with families who are hoping to return their loved one back to Little City on a process that we feel gets reasonably at what CDC and public health are required by way of reintroducing a person back into the environment. And it's the same on an emergency admission and the like, that we will make sure that we've taken every precaution that we can so that we can meet the needs of the individuals who may be reentering back into Little City.
Thank you, Sean. Like you said, our intention is to communicate this plan with our families at the end of this week, and for our adult resident families next week. And you alluded to another poll, and we do have one. Jane, could you please present the second poll question?
Hi, absolutely. Now this question, same as before, you're going to answer into the Q&A 1, 2, or 3 on your feelings about how do you feel about the reopening of our residential programs for visitations. 1, it's just way too soon. 2, I feel good about the controlled visits that Sean described. 3, I feel it should return to how it was before. So again, please use the Q&A box to answer 1, 2, or 3. And I'll give you 30 seconds or so to reply to that. I think yes, we had good practice at the last time. People are better this time at doing that. Thank you. I appreciate it. This is good feedback for all of us. And you know, Sean had predicted what might be your response, so it'll be interesting to see how accurate his prediction is. And again, it's, you know, about close to 70% say that they feel good about those controlled visits. And the majority, then there's a couple people that are still a little bit nervous. Just one or two people thought, you know, it should go back exactly that the way it is before, but the vast majority seem to feel that they're good about those control visits. Sean?
Right. So Jane, I took a quick glance over and I saw that there are also some narrative responses. And those responses go beyond just the idea of a controlled visit to one that would reintroduce their loved one back into their home temporarily to return back to Little City. And that's a challenge. And, you know, I'm not sure, Tina, if this is the moment to begin to discuss kind of the implications there, because each time there is contact with the outside reintroduces the possibility of the virus coming to Little City. I mean, so CDC and IDPH have been real adamant about that. One of the things that they mentioned in the guidance we received from the Department of Human Services, that were Leanna, for example, to take her son home as a part of that visit, their recommendation to us is that he would stay home, that there's not, because you're introducing the possibility of reinfection into the organization. So that's what we're wrestling with, is that tension of, I get why we want to get back to those weekend visits and doing the things that we did with our loved one. I want to get back to where I can fly to Houston, Texas and see my grandkids and hug them and get on the plane and come back. But the guidance right now really speaks against that. And what we're trying to do is find that happy medium. And so what is being proposed as our response to phase 3? Now, if the governor begins to, or public health and CDC begins to relax that, or if vaccines are in sight and the like, it will be a better opportunity for us to do. But I do respect the opinion of those families who they want their loved one back, not just for a quick visit and out, because that can also be stressful. Because they're not, our folks are not necessarily going to understand social distancing when you've seen your mom for the first time in 60 days. My grandkids, if I got off a plane, would be the first to run and hug me, as opposed to knowing, you know, that's not the case. So this is one that we're going to take smaller steps, hopefully leading to the place that many of us want to get to in the safest possible way.
Thank you, Sean. One thing we can all agree on is how trying of a time this has been for our families. And of course, our highest priority is to keep our residents and our staff safe and healthy. So finally, our final topic. For the past few months, we haven't been able to turn on the TV or go online without hearing about the devastating toll this pandemic has taken on our economy. Millions of jobs have been lost and lives have been turned upside down. Our staff has been concerned about the future of Little City and would like to know if there are plans for layoffs and how this crisis has affected the financial stability of our organization.
So Tina, when I started this town hall meeting, I spoke in terms of present. You know, presently, there are no plans for layoff. I want to give kind of the good news first. When the pandemic first hit, I had grave concerns about what would happen to our human service system. This is not a political statement, but I was blown away by what this current administration did to preserve the human service safety net. It was unexpected. And for those who are on the call or who are following, who are unaware, the state of Illinois basically made us whole. And what I mean by that, even though a significant part of our day services was shutting down, they made it possible for us not to lay off any of our staff. So our staff did not become victims as much of our economy did to the financial devastation of the crisis. And we have done our best to maintain that posture. And so as we speak, there have been no COVID-related layoffs. Now, we've had some people who exited the workforce voluntarily, just given the nature of it. Some had health concerns or family concerns that did it, but no one was placed on, regardless of from bus drivers who are no longer driving buses to day service people or our clerical assistants in terms of where things are located. Everyone who wished to stay employed at Little City, we were able to do so. And that was not without some costs. The state's making whole is not easy to decipher moment or number. If you have a moment and you want to see some real life TV, watch our CFO every morning in front of that PC, trying to find every possible dollar that we can put toward the sustainability of Little City. I chuckle when I go in because he's glued to it, got his budget staff there. So this belief that some people have that the state of Illinois made Little City flush with cash is very inaccurate. And so at this point, we are our heads above water. We're able to meet payroll. We are concerned. Now, we were concerned because at this stage, the CARES Act money, the federal dollars, are what is lifted the state to make that possible. We're at a point now that those federal dollars are gone and you're now on state general revenue. And I won't get too far into that and confuse folks. The state now has to make a decision come July 1 as to whether or not it will continue to operate in such a generous way. My feeling is they won't, that things will have to get back to normal as soon as possible so that the billings for services can actually take place. What the legislators have done, and if you're familiar with kind of federal budgets, they do what's deemed as a continuing resolution. There's no such a thing in Illinois, so they did something similar. They have approved a budget for fiscal year 21 which will require a review after 90 days. And so what that means for us is that our operation, to the extent possible, to the extent that we meet what the billing requirements are, will be untouched for at least 90 days past July. Now, if we see that the budgets, as the legislators come back and really assess, because like us, they don't know the real economic impact of COVID yet. They don't know. There's been a lot of borrowing, a lot of money that was thrown around to do quick fix. Like us, they're going to have to pause and see, do we have a sustainable system? And depending on what you read, the debt of this state has just multiplied. So its ability to meet all its obligations is going to be very much strained. So I think, Tina, we do face a potential loss in state funding once we're out of the pandemic crisis, that the reality will hit. What we've also experienced, and this is where, again, those who thought that the state is going to make us whole, a substantial part of what we do to make Little City what it is comes from donated resources, fundraising. Our major donors experience loss. Their stock values, their economic values impaired. We lost 3 of our major events, both the golf outing, the gala, and even our poker night, which were the big events for Little City with, proceeds in excess of $1 million gone. And so our ability right now to try to continue the operations of Little City as we know it, fully employed, making sure the PPE equipments are purchased, the food is always being delivered, all the things that we need, the lights are on, are very much stretched. And were it not for some of our austerity leading to this moment, we would be in a position like some of our peers. And so, Tina, the impact is not yet felt in terms of what it's going to be, but even getting to this point has not been one where the cash has just been waiting to be deposited and thrown about in some way that's reckless. We have done, I think we've been very prudent users of the available funds to operate Little City. We're appreciative of the legislative effort to what could have been devastating were we to have to shut down our day services program without any financial support, would have put hundreds of people out of jobs and hundreds of people not being supported as we move into the future. So the impact it's been significant to this point, but we don't know the full extent until those federal dollars officially start and the state recognizes what it can and cannot support.
Thank you. What you spoke of certainly relates to the aftershocks of this earthquake that we have experienced. And as we conclude, Sean, I would like to ask you for some final remarks. What has been the biggest surprise for you these past few months? What have you unexpectedly learned that perhaps wouldn't have transpired had this situation not presented itself?
Well, a couple things come to mind, Tina, and one is, which you kind of know, but is when you experience it becomes even more real. We have a fantastic group of staff. I've been blown away by the acts of not only kindness, but acts of commitment. My latest, best friend forever is Natalette Dixon, who, last time we spoke, it was David Kim. And, we know the story of David Kim. It's been heralded in newspapers and Facebooks and you name it. Well, Natalette Dixon has similarly stepped up and stepped in on very similar circumstances. And so what I kind of reflect on that, and it just goes to show sometimes people do things not for themselves, but to be an inspiration to others. We know that the Boer family, when we met with them with the gift that they gave, didn't give for the recognition of the gift. Their hope was that it would inspire others, that their actions inspire others. And those to me are the real heroes of Little City. Those people who do things not for the glory of what it is, but for the glory that it will inspire others. David's action inspired one of his co-workers to step forth and do something very similar. And I think the other thing, Tina, that comes to mind, I have come to know some people at Little City during this crisis in ways that I would have never come to know them were it not for the crisis. And I've got to see them, whether or not it's the Wendy's, the Joanne's, the Ola's, the Cherie's, I can go on, that they have stepped in leadership roles that have just showed us that I think the foundation of Little City is one that's very solid. Phil, who's on the line, who I know is listening in, and Jessica invited me to their team meeting, and I'm watching inspired leadership, goes beyond what I can bring. I'm seeing these sparks of leadership by our staff at all levels that are just phenomenal. And they're taking us to places we could not do this alone. We knew that from the outset. And they have expanded the touch and the reach of Little City by way of how they're contacting families, how they're bringing in new people. they're doing those things that just inspires me to catch up with them. And so it's a little bit easier knowing that I'm not carrying the load, I'm guiding the load because they're pushing us forward. And so I'm very optimistic. And I threw out, at the beginning, just the whole notion of metanoia. And I know some folks will Google and come up with some other interpretations, but we got to think about this differently. If we think about it in terms of what we lost, and that's where I've been inspired by our staff, they're not looking at loss. They're looking at because they see the mission is there. Our people need to service, whether or not it's in a big box, small box, a telephone booth, whatever. We have people who have the determination to overcome any and everything that's thrown in front of them. And so that to me, Tina, is that, if we look at halftime, we're not losing. It's one thing to come into halftime and you're down 100 points and you don't have enough time to get it done. We come into halftime victorious. We come in energized. We come in bruised, get taped up, but we believe that we can win the second half. Okay, so that's what I think our team has done for me, Tina, is it's inspired me to believe if I'm that coach. One of our folks asked me, if this is halftime, Sean, what do you say in the locker room? I'm just saying, bring it on. One of our staff actually played some words back for me that were very similar to some that I used elsewhere. And I shared with one of our board members and family because I was remembering her father, and it was basically, we got this. One of our new staff, and as we were wrestling with an admission issue, sent me a text that said, Sean, we got this. She didn't know that we had been using that. So it's telling me that folks are embracing what we're trying to do. They're buying in. And with that, Tina, sky's the limit. We're going to come out of this okay. Is it tough? Should we let up? Don't let up. You don't let up. We've had a winning formula coming into halftime. Play the game through. Play it to the end. Okay. We're in it to win it. So don't let up. Don't say it wasn't worth it. It was worth it. The sacrifices were worth it, but we can't give in, Tina, right now. We're too close to getting this right. So that's my, my end there is we're in it to win it, folks. And we are.
Thank you, Sean. I would also like to acknowledge that so many of you continue to ask how you can help Little City. Before we share a special video, Jane would like one final moment to share the opportunities available that allow our supporters to make a difference. Jane?
Thank you, Tina. After the last time that we presented this, so many people afterwards had texted and emailed and said, I need to know how to help. So I just want to thank people who made masks, made donations to our COVID-19 response fund. It's been really heartwarming. And so, from all of us, I really want to thank everyone who's really given and done what they can. And, I know those mask makers are I'm very impressed. I don't know how you do it. And so one of the things that Sean mentioned is that, we've lost almost $1 million worth of canceled events and revenue, and we are going towards virtual events right now. So I hope that you will consider signing up for our virtual Hero Walk that you will find on our website, littlecity.org/Hero Walk, and create teams. It would be great to see families participating together. And we will be launching some fun social media events next week. And we are looking for more families to join the committee. So if you have any interest in joining the committee and, help us do this 3-month virtual fundraising walk, and depending on what happens in the state of Illinois, hopefully we will all be able to get together sometime in October in an open field in Busse Woods and celebrate this success. But in the meantime, it would be awesome if we could all get together and work together virtually. We've also sent out a survey a couple months ago about what are the things that Little City can do to better educate families and parents and guardians. So in response to your suggestions is that we are launching a quarterly parents and family guardian seminar, and our first one is scheduled for July 15th. And some attorneys will be joining us and presenting, everything you need to know about special needs trust virtually in a format like this. So we will be sending all families and guardians information on that. So save the date for there. And of course, there's so many ways that you can help. So if you want to look at littlecity.org, ways to help, that would be awesome. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, jdrew@littlecity.com. Happy to answer any of your questions or, brainstorm some ideas with you. So I really appreciate it. And then looking forward, we've looked at ways that maybe, how can we better serve you as far as one-stop shopping for getting your questions? So we've set up a hotline as such as 847-221-7997. So if you have questions after tonight or at any time that's, not specific to a particular program or whatever, use that hotline and someone will get back to you. Otherwise, you can email us at covid@littlecity.org, and we will make sure that that's routed to the correct person, and we will get you an answer as short as possible. So I appreciate all of your time tonight, and thank you.
Again, thank you all for joining in tonight. And as we sign off, please just stay a few minutes longer to watch this special video of thanks from several of our Little City families.
It's Siegel family here.
Hello, I'm Amy.
And I'm Ray.
We're the parents of Ricky Sarteski, residing at the Spruce home.
Hi, this is Kelly Trupa, Sean Trupa's mom.
It is Peyton, Paul's brother here.
Hi, I'm Kim Sierra.
I just wanted to give you a quick thank you for all that you're doing to keep our boys healthy and safe during this really difficult time. You guys have always been amazing, and I've always appreciated so much what you've done, even more so now.
Wanting to give a shout out to Little City, specifically Foglia Home. We want to thank the frontline staff for your continued commitment, your courage, and your desire to want to serve. Know that we're praying for you, and that we appreciate you more than words could ever say. Thank you for being there each and every day. Be safe. See you soon.
We just wanted to thank the staff at Foglia and Maple Home for, when Paul was over there, always taking good care of him and making sure that he was, making the best out of his time. You guys were never not letting him be unproductive. You guys always had him doing something. So I really appreciate that. And I hope everyone's staying safe there. And yeah, thank you.
Express my appreciation to every member of the Little City team. Thank you for the sacrifices you have made each day. Thank you for continuing to support our loved ones' dreams, visions, and goals during this time. I am so grateful for your commitment. Thank you for serving and protecting those we love.
Thank the staff at Foglia and also Maple, where Paul used to be. You guys work crazy long hours. You're patient, you're kind, you are so good with all the kids, and especially with our Polly Bear. And especially during a time like this, we just want to say thank you for all your tireless efforts and for everything you do. It's a great staff over there. We couldn't feel better about the people who are working with our son. And we really can't thank you enough from the bottom of our hearts.
I got to give props and shout outs to my people at Little City for doing a great job. You guys are the true heroes, taking care of these young men and women with special needs at this stressful time.
I just want to tell you all how unbelievably grateful I am to you for what you're doing for Sean right now. And by doing that, you're also doing for me and my family.
We'd like to thank all the staff members at Little City and to let you know how much we appreciate you.
For taking care of my big brother.
Hi, thank you for taking care of my brother and the other kids during these difficult times.
Thank you guys very much. And I know these are tough times and weird situations, and we're all struggling to get through it, but you guys mean the world to us because you're taking good care of our son. And we will never forget that. Thank you guys all so much.
Health and happiness.
Stay safe.
You are like an extended family to us. In fact, you're more than that. You are like angels. Please stay safe, and thank you again for all that you're doing.
Thank you for all you do. Stay safe.
God bless.
True heroes work at Little City.
We appreciate you so. I believe there are angels who walk on this earth, and I am privileged to know some. Please take care of yourself and know that we're thinking about you.